Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. There are moments in life when we believe we are fine on our own, that independence equates to happiness, but then there come days when we suddenly realize how eerily silent the world around us has become. This is the story of Martha, a brave young woman who left her hometown for the city, hoping for a fresh start. Yet instead of finding freedom, she found herself trapped in the depths of loneliness. Martha's story is one that many can relate to, a journey of rediscovering the true meaning of connection in life. Martha's life had always been one of independence. She had grown used to living alone, finding comfort in solitude and managing everything herself. She convinced herself that this was the way to live self-sufficient, with no need to rely on anyone. But despite the security she found in her independence, a lingering emptiness always hovered at the edges of her life, like a quiet ache she couldn't ignore. It was on an ordinary day, when she least expected it, that Martha's world began to shift. She had just returned home from a particularly draining day at work, her mind consumed with thoughts of tasks and responsibilities. As she reached her front door, she found a small note slipped under it. It was from Ben, her neighbor, who she had barely exchanged a word with in the past few years. The note was simple, an invitation for coffee the following afternoon. No strings attached, no pressure, just a kind gesture of wanting to connect. Martha stood there, looking at the note for a long moment, unsure of how to respond. The idea of spending time with someone, even in such a casual way, made her feel exposed. She had built a wall around herself, convinced that she didn't need anyone else. But something about Ben's gesture struck her, and instead of dismissing it as she would have done in the past, she found herself making a decision. She would go. The next afternoon, she arrived at Ben's apartment, her heart fluttering with nervousness. The door swung open, and there he was, a warm smile on his face, his eyes kind and welcoming. The simplicity of the situation hit her. No grand expectations, no complicated plans, just a shared moment of human connection. As they sat down with their coffee, Martha found herself slowly letting down the walls she had so carefully constructed. They spoke about life, work, the city they both lived in, and the things that made them happy. There was no pretense, no effort to impress. It was simply two people talking, connecting in a way that felt both foreign and refreshing to Martha. She was surprised by how easy it was to engage in this simple conversation, how her fears of vulnerability seemed less daunting in the presence of someone who was just there, offering kindness without any hidden agenda. For the first time in a long time, Martha felt something she had been missing: connection. It was as though the invitation to coffee had opened a door in her heart, one that she had locked out of fear and habit. And as they spoke, Martha realized that this small, seemingly insignificant interaction was changing something deep within her. She no longer felt the need to hide behind her independence or convince herself that she was fine on her own. For the first time, she saw that there was strength in vulnerability, and that true independence didn't mean rejecting connection. It meant being open to it, while still maintaining a sense of self. As the coffee came to an end and she stepped back into her own apartment, Martha couldn't help but smile to herself. She realized that the journey she had started was far from over. There were still moments when she would feel the pull of isolation, when the old patterns of fear and independence would try to creep back in, but this time she knew better. She had experienced the power of a simple gesture, the warmth of a shared conversation, and the beauty of allowing herself to connect with someone else. The walls she had built weren't as impenetrable as she had once believed, and with each step she took toward opening up, Martha found herself closer to something she had long yearned for: a sense of belonging. The next few weeks following that simple coffee with Ben changed something fundamental in Martha. She found herself thinking more about the connections around her, those she had taken for granted or avoided altogether. It wasn't just Ben. His invitation had sparked something deeper, something she couldn't ignore. Little by little, she began to understand how isolating her self-sufficiency had been. While it had once seemed like a badge of honor, it was slowly dawning on her that it was a form of protection. Protection from vulnerability, from the risk of being hurt, and from the reality that maybe, just maybe, she needed others. Martha's newfound perspective was both freeing and challenging. She hadn't expected a casual meeting over coffee to shake her so profoundly, but it did. With Ben, she had experienced a connection that felt simple yet real. That realization haunted her for a while. How many opportunities for connection had she passed by in the name of independence? How many friends or potential relationships had she avoided simply because they would require her to let go of control and allow someone else in? This realization didn't come all at once. It was in small moments that she began to feel a subtle shift. At work, she started engaging more openly with colleagues, taking the time to ask them about their lives outside of work. She even accepted an invitation from a coworker to have lunch together, something she had always politely declined in the past. And when her phone rang, instead of letting it go to voicemail, she answered it more often, reconnecting with old friends she had once distanced herself from. Each interaction, no matter how small, felt like a step forward. Martha had begun to see the value of these connections, not just as distractions from her solitary life, but as vital parts of her well-being. She wasn't giving up her independence. Rather, she was discovering that it was possible to be both independent and open to others. True independence, she realized, didn't mean shutting people out, but rather having the strength to open herself up without losing who she was. Her connection with Ben continued to grow in the weeks that followed. They would meet regularly, sharing stories, laughing about their day-to-day experiences, and even supporting each other through small struggles. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city, Ben turned to Martha and said, "You know, sometimes the best moments in life come when we stop trying to control everything and just let things unfold naturally." Martha smiled, realizing how true his words were. That was the heart of it. By letting go of the need to manage every aspect of her life, she was starting to embrace the beauty of the unexpected. She wasn't just opening herself to others. She was opening herself to life in all its unpredictable, messy, and wonderful forms. As time passed, Martha began to feel less alone, not because she had solved everything, but because she had allowed herself to connect. She knew there would be times when she'd feel the pull of her old habits, the desire for solitude, the ease of living without expectation. But now, when those moments arose, she wouldn't fear them. Instead, she would remind herself of the simple truth that true strength lies not in doing everything alone, but in allowing others to walk alongside you. Martha's growing openness to connection had unlocked something within her, but it was a slow process of unlearning old patterns. As she spent more time with Ben and other colleagues, she realized that that vulnerability was not as frightening as she had once believed. It wasn't about weakness, but about strength, the strength to face uncertainty and the courage to invite others into her life. Yet it was still a delicate balance. She could feel herself grappling with the pull of her old habits, the desire for solitude and the safety of familiar routines. The fear of being let down, of opening herself up too much, lingered in the background. One day, as Martha walked into her favorite cafe for another catch-up with Ben, she noticed something different. It wasn't the usual routine of ordering her usual coffee and sitting down in the same corner. This time, Ben was already there, sitting with a new face. He smiled and waved her over. The unfamiliarity of the situation made her hesitate for a moment, but Ben's warm expression and the lack of any judgment put her at ease. "Hey, Martha," he said with his usual laid-back smile. "This is Lucy. She's in town for a few days, and I thought it would be nice if you two met." Martha didn't know what to say. She had never been comfortable in group settings, especially when it came to meeting new people. But Ben's invitation wasn't about forcing her into anything. It was about offering the opportunity to connect in a safe, low-pressure way. With a deep breath, Martha decided to take the leap. The conversation flowed easily, far easier than she expected. Lucy was friendly, funny, and surprisingly open. As they all talked, Martha found herself enjoying the exchange, the effortless back and forth, the genuine interest in one another's lives. In that moment, she realized that she wasn't just connecting with Lucy and Ben. She was connecting with herself in a new way, allowing herself to be present, vulnerable, and open without fear. When the afternoon drew to a close and they all said their goodbyes, Martha felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of belonging. It wasn't about fitting perfectly into a mold or meeting some ideal expectation. It was about showing up as who she was and being accepted as she was. That simple act of connecting, of stepping outside her comfort zone, had given her a new perspective. She could be independent and still be part of something bigger than herself. Walking home that evening, Martha reflected on the quiet evolution taking place within her. The walls she had so carefully built around herself were gradually coming down, not because she had to let go of her independence, but because she was learning to let others in. And as she embraced this shift, she began to understand that true connection didn't come from expecting perfection or controlling outcomes. It came from showing up and being willing to grow. As Martha continued her journey of growth, she found herself facing new challenges that pushed her beyond her comfort zone. It wasn't just about learning to open up to others. It was about integrating the changes she had made within herself into every area of her life. The deeper Martha's connection with Ben and her new friends became, the more she realized that her capacity for intimacy wasn't a limited resource. There was room for more. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Martha found herself reflecting on how far she'd come. She had spent so many years keeping her world small and tightly controlled. But now it seemed like everything had shifted in subtle ways. She was no longer afraid of showing vulnerability or admitting her imperfections. And yet, there was still one aspect of her life that remained a struggle. Balancing her desire for connection with her need for independence. Ben had been patient with her throughout their growing friendship, never pushing her to move faster than she was comfortable with. But as they talked more about their shared interests, he began to suggest things they could do together: weekend hikes, exploring new restaurants, traveling to places neither had been. At first, the idea of giving up her weekends to make plans with someone else seemed like an intrusion, but she soon realized that it wasn't about losing her independence, it was about expanding her world. The thought of these new experiences excited her in a way she hadn't expected. As she made plans with Ben, Martha began to shift her mindset. Instead of seeing these opportunities as obligations, she started seeing them as invitations, ways to build more meaningful connections, ways to explore herself and the world with others by her side. Her desire for control started to feel less like an armor protecting her from hurt and more like a limitation that held her back from experiencing life fully. With each new experience, she found herself feeling more alive, more in tune with herself and the people around her. Her world was expanding, but rather than feeling overwhelmed, she felt empowered. She had never imagined that leaning into her vulnerabilities could lead to such growth, but now she understood that it was through connecting with others that she was discovering new parts of herself. It wasn't about losing herself in others or giving up her sense of autonomy. It was about discovering a new way to coexist with those around her, embracing both her independence and her need for connection. And as she looked ahead, Martha realized that her journey wasn't just about becoming a more open person, it was about finding the courage to live fully in every aspect of her life. As Martha continued to explore this newfound balance between independence and connection, she began to realize that the process of change wasn't a destination, but a continuous journey. The small steps she had taken over the past few months, letting go of her need for control, opening up to others, embracing vulnerability, had all led her to this moment of self-discovery. Yet she knew that there was still much more to learn, and each experience offered her a new lesson in both her personal growth and her relationships. One particularly poignant moment came when Martha, Ben, and their group of friends went on a weekend camping trip. It was an opportunity for them to disconnect from their busy lives and truly be present with one another, in nature and in conversation. As the evening fire crackled and everyone settled in around it, Martha felt a deep sense of peace. She realized how different this moment was from the rigid, isolated world she had once inhabited. Surrounded by people she cared about, she no longer felt the need to control the situation or retreat into her old patterns of solitude. Instead, she was simply enjoying the present moment, feeling connected to her surroundings and to the people around her. During a quiet moment by the lake, Ben turned to Martha and shared something deeply personal about his own past. His vulnerability in that moment struck her deeply, reminding her how far she had come in learning to open up and share her own truth. She realized that just as Ben had been a steady presence in her life, her own willingness to share her vulnerabilities had created a deeper bond between them. Their connection had shifted from a surface-level friendship to something more profound, built on mutual trust and understanding. This experience solidified for Martha that the courage to be vulnerable wasn't about showing weakness or relying too heavily on others. It was about creating authentic, meaningful connections with those who truly saw and accepted her for who she was. In that moment, she understood that the true power of vulnerability lay in its ability to bring people together, to create spaces where trust and authenticity could flourish. In the days that followed, Martha felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that the fear of losing herself in others was a barrier she had long imposed on herself, not an inherent truth. Instead of seeing relationships as something that could potentially drain or diminish her, she began to see them as opportunities to grow, to discover new aspects of herself, and to deepen her understanding of the world. Her journey wasn't just about learning how to be vulnerable, it was about embracing the complexities of human connection. Martha understood that relationships, whether with Ben, her friends, or herself, were not static entities, but dynamic, evolving experiences that required patience, understanding, and openness. Each new chapter of her life was an opportunity to continue this exploration, finding the courage to push past her fears and continue growing in the company of others. And with each new step, Martha knew she was becoming the person she was always meant to be, someone who was both strong in her independence and deeply connected to those around her. As we navigate through the seasons of life, we come to understand that true fulfillment lies not in control or isolation, but in the willingness to embrace vulnerability and connection. Like Martha, we may discover that it's never too late to open our hearts, share our stories, and build deeper bonds with others. Life in all its stages is a journey of continuous growth, and each step we take toward understanding and compassion enriches our experience. In the end, it is the relationships we nurture and the wisdom we share that leave the most lasting and meaningful impact. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments one insight you gained and how you plan to apply it in your life. Your feedback is invaluable and keeps us motivated. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support enables us to continue creating content that informs and inspires. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.